Hi everyone, Jack here, just returning from my trip to Ireland to hang out with all the guys in person for the first time in some time. We recorded this week's edition of Link to the Cast while we were in a car journeying down to Cork, so it might not sound particularly great. So this is your fair warning that if you can't stand the sound of it, the audio does get better as the podcast goes on, but we were in a car speeding down the motorway towards Garrett Kidney's home and native land, so many apologies if the audio isn't up to its usual whack. We will be recording Link to the Cast as per usual next week, so this is just a temporary measure to make sure we got something out there. So yeah, hope everybody has a wonderful week, and we will speak to you in a much more high quality audio format next time. But anyway, on with the show.
Hello and welcome back to Link to the Cast, your weekly dose of video games and nerd culture ephemera, available everywhere good podcasts are sold. I'm on the road. I'm your party host, Dave Ryan, and I'm joined on this great road of life, firstly, by the handsome conduit, our chauffeur for the day, Mark Robinson. Mark, how are you?
Well, I'm currently working on about 3 hours sleep, so good luck for the drive on the way home, gentlemen.
We find ourselves currently in transit in Ireland on the way down to, for the first time in myself and another co-host case, meet Garrett Kidney for the first time in person. We thought we'd bring you along for the ride. Mark, how are the roads faring today?
Not too bad actually. As you mentioned, there are a bunch of GAA games going on at the moment, so a lot of the traffic is coming towards Dublin as we're coming out of Dublin. I realise I currently sound like I'm doing the road report for RTE1. But no, we're all good. It's been a pleasant journey so far, and crucially, we have been to Barrack Plaza.
Yes, more of that anon. Mark, are you somebody that finds driving relaxing or stressful? Where like, is a long drive something you relish, something you dread?
I mean, I don't really care for it, if I'm being perfectly honest. If I can avoid driving, I will. I did have a period of time a couple of years ago where long distance driving was like giving me mad anxiety, but I've gotten over it since then. So yeah, I mean, I don't really like sitting down for long periods of time unless, you know, I'm playing a game or watching a film. Driving isn't kind of my go-to, but for you gentlemen, it's my pleasure today.
Just imagine it's like Forza with much shitter weather.
Yeah, I could drive into a tree and it wouldn't kill me.
That's very true. It's very true. Well, you don't know for a fact yet. You haven't driven into a tree yet, and you're not dead. So, as they rounding us out, of course, the Sidona Sim, currently gripping a bottle of Sidona very tightly, joining us in Ireland, deigning us with his presence. It's Mr. Chelsea, Jack Lazell. Jack, how are you?
I feel great. Honestly, it's great to be here. I've missed it. It's a lovely place, and seeing you two fine gentlemen in the flesh is much better than staring at you on a computer screen, for sure.
Jack, you're staying with me for the weekend. What are some of the highlights of the trip so far?
Well, you know, Barrack Plaza, finding out about Matthew Broderick and how he killed a guy. You know, all of the Irish important landmarks. What else is there?
All the sites. Could you, for the listener, because Mark mentioned it now, you have, could you mention what the deal is with the Barrack Plaza in Moneygall in Ireland?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, my first interaction with it was my parents were over here visiting my family on the west of Ireland, driving from Dublin to Shannon, and decided to stop at a rest station, and the next thing I know, I get a text from my dad, him and my mum standing next to Barack Obama, and then being extremely confused, and then having to sort of, I don't know if it was separately that Dave, you brought it up with me, there's a, for some reason, what is it, his great-grandfather, what was the lineage, was like great-grandfather was like, or grandmother was like a,
I think it's maternal great-grandparent of some description.
Yeah, well, he's like 1/16 or something Irish, and they come from that town, the small town Moneygall, and they've decided to just claim him. So you walk into the town, it's like, yeah, ancestral home of Barack Obama. There's a bronze statue outside of all places, a service station, and they've even mocked him up in the local hurling team's colours.
Not even the local one, the Kerry one. from way down the county, because I'm assuming the Kerry folk drop in there on the way up to the GA games in Dublin. So it's just like stolen valor, left, right, and centre. We sadly didn't get a chance to go upstairs to the very real Barack Obama Visitor Centre and conference room adjacent. Actually, that would have been a good bit if we had more time, is to book the conference room to do the podcast in. Next time.
Yeah. Then there's always time on the way back.
Yeah. Could you imagine if we could open Link to the Cast, but coming to you live from the Barrack Obama Plaza? That'd be great. We also ate many foods. Jack, you had an experience in a place called My Meat Wagon. How was that for you?
Yeah, I ate like at least 3 or 4 kinds of beast. It was impressive. The first thing I see when I turn up is just a big pile of meat. I was immediately home. Yeah, it's been a good time so far, and now we're on the way to see Garrett, and it's only going to get better from here.
Not only Garrett, but Barry. So like the Game of the Year crew will actually be in person together for the first time.
Yeah. I think we might have been in the same room together once or twice, potentially, if I came over for a show, but yeah, never actually spoken or acknowledged each other all at once, yeah.
It's a weekend of acknowledging with Money in the Bank in the books, I guess. Well, I guess we'll go on to what we've seen lately, and I'll go back to you, Mark, first. Apart from the long winding roads of the country, what have you seen lately?
So I had to be very delicate about how I approached this. So Maria decided that she wanted to watch a random episode of the Matt Smith era of Doctor Who. She absolutely loves like the David Tennant, Matt Smith era of Doctor Who. I think she's kind of seen all of like the modern version of Doctor Who, but like those two in particular kind of are preferences. I don't know about you two, but like I don't really have any kind of reference for Doctor Who. Like I've seen it a little bit here and there because it's obviously like a British staple. But for like you two, what is your kind of like knowledge or consumption of Doctor Who?
So I watched a little bit of the Eccleston Who when like they dumped a whole load of like the Eccleston and Tennant run on Netflix at some point. And I was like, yeah, this seems like something I would like if I had watched it when I was like 10 or 15 years younger. It's just something I kind of like it. I echo you, like I have no childhood fondness for it, so it's never quite got purchased, even though I can acknowledge some of the things about it and some of the lore is pretty cool. How about you, Jack?
Yeah, for me it was the David Tennant era. I just think David Tennant in general is a very good actor, always brings me in with his performances. Wasn't particularly interested in Doctor Who either. I think with our generation, we were maybe sort of 19, 20 when they brought it back, in and around that point. And I know for instance, my dad is going back as a massive Doctor Who fan because it was a big thing on TV when they were growing up. It's one of those things that you only would have caught it in reruns on like some weird channel like UK Gold or something back in the day, so I didn't really have too much of a, like, culturally I knew what Doctor Who was, and and Daleks and all the references and Cybermen from it that you can think of, but never really sat down and watched it too much until David Tennant was on it. I'm also a big Billie Piper fan. Like, I think she's really, really good. I talked about I Hate Susie, I think a year or so ago, how good of a show that is. So
were you a big Because I Want To fan in the 90s?
Yeah, it was a rib actually in school for a long time that Matthew Kenneth James Biggs' cousin was Billie Piper, and we caught quite a few people out with that story actually. Many people believed it, so yeah. No, the song's obviously not great, but yeah, Billie Piper is a pretty good actress, at least I think anyway.
Also, Lawrence Fox, absolute cunt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we sat down and watched it. There was a particular episode where they go back to meet Van Gogh, and there's a whole bit about there's like some beast from another dimension or whatever that only Van Gogh can see, and he has to like draw it or something or another. But it was fairly compelling, and I was like, fuck it, let's start from the beginning of the Matt Smith era, and I'll watch it with you. And there's something, and this is kind of obvious, but there's something very inherently British about Doctor Who. But it's like, because when you think of like Britishness these days, it's usually Brexit, inherent racism, and just all the bad stuff. But Doctor Who seems to be kind of like a celebration of like the good side of the Britishness. And there's also, it straddles this line in that a lot of the time you're watching it, you can see how very easily this show could fall through the cracks because of like the budget is not there a lot of the time. Like there are times where like certain set pieces and the production are really well put together, like the costume design, and I think like when it comes to British shows, they usually do the costume side of the production really well. But, and I know it's a thing we've kind of harped on for the last few weeks, but the CGI is some of the worst I've ever seen on a television or in film production. And it's fine, whatever. You kind of have to sort of like just accept it for what it is, and if you can kind of do that, you can kind of be sort of charmed to like where they have to cut corners to because you know this is like a sci-fi show about a Time Lord who goes through different periods of time and destinations and whatnot, and it's very ambitious for what is clearly not like a budget that they have to work with. But I think that it works so much because I think Matt Smith is really, really compelling in the role, and like him and Karen Gillan, when it's wild. Like for me, Karen Gillan is Nebula. That's like my frame of reference for her. So to see her in this kind of early period, I think they play really well off of each other. Sometimes you can see where, going back to like where the corners are being cut, where instead of kind of showing you the thing that they're terrified of or reacting to, you just see them kind of standing there and the camera is shaking around and they're looking around. And they do that sort of thing quite a lot, and there are times like that where it does look a bit naff. And overall, there are times where the show it does feel a bit naff, but there is kind of a charm to the way it presents it. And you know what, it's alright. It's alright. I think I'd like to go back and watch the David Tennant era, just to see kind of how he... because obviously every kind of era of Doctor Who, there's a different kind of vibe to how that Doctor is represented. I always wanted to watch the Peter Capaldi era, because of the thick of it, but I never did. So I might kind of stick around, or at least watch a few episodes from each Doctor, just to kind of see how they present it. But yeah.
I heard the Peter Capaldi era was really serious. Like they took like a really... like more of an acting slant on it, and it was less quirky. But I think you saying Doctor Who, like a little bit bending the edges and it not looking great, that's always been the case, hasn't it? Because back in the day when they could see like the sets bending in the background and it just looking generally a bit shit and a bit of a shambles, and people like dressed up in weird bed sheets and stuff to be the bad guys in it. But that's just always, yeah, it's very quirky. We're a very odd bunch of people in Britain at our heart, and I think Doctor Who kind of represents that really well.
And it's also like the amount of cameos that you get in any given episode. Like there's one episode where, now I didn't Google check to see, but I'm pretty sure Jim Broadbent is dressed up as a reptilian that lives in the center of the earth. So it's just like any fucking given episode, you're seeing someone who's like, oh yeah, I know you from whatever, you're on fucking Coronation Street, what are you doing here? And so there's that kind of part of it as well. Like Olivia Colman shows up in the first episode, and this particular series, I don't know if it's for all of them, there's a thing for teeth that they really have a thing for, where you've either got like some vampiric fish-like monster that takes over these people, and then they have like big gangly teeth. In the first episode, Olivia Colman is, or there's this monster that is using a kind of a representation of Olivia Colman, I guess. And so it's kind of wild. These random people show up for like 5-minute bit part cameos, and then you never see them again. But again, I think that's kind of like, again, the charm and the celebration of Britain and British actors and actresses. They will just show up for 5 minutes in an episode of Doctor Who. It's really cool. I do like that.
Have you gotten to Blink, which is the Moffat written episode that everybody, like I've seen it even, everybody says like that's the one that's like just incredible, because it's almost like a standalone with these the Weeping Angels that had never shown up before. I think they've only come back like once since, and it was like an hour or a half hour, however, I can never remember how long Doctor Who is, but like an episode of like solid horror basically.
Yeah, so that's a David Tennant episode. So they actually return. There's a two-parter with Matt Smith, and they return. And there's like and again, I don't know for other seasons, but there's a long kind of story over arc that centers around Karen Gillan's character. But there is a two-part episode where they have the Weeping Angels, and yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the Blink episode. I probably will watch it at some point. But it's a really inventive way of presenting horror with these like weeping angels that they only move when you kind of blink or look away and then look back again. And I haven't seen that episode, but I can just from the two-part they do, I can see how that would be a really effective episode.
Yeah, it's a really clever concept, and it's really well written, and you can see from it how shortly after Blink, I think it is, that Moffat gets the Sherlock job, reboots it with Mark Gatiss. It's really well written, but again, it goes to show what H. Bomber Guy always says, that like Moffat is a great writer but not a great showrunner. I suppose I'll go to me next, and while I was waiting for Jack on Friday, I went to a cinema in Dublin and I saw Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Yeah. Gentlemen, this movie was quite something. Of course, like a couple of the old heads are back. Harrison Ford, of course. We do get a little bit of a run-in from Marion, Karen Allen. Jonathan Rhys-Davies returns, which is great. Good to see him in something that isn't dwarf makeup for the first time in a long time. That rules. I'm kind of been going back and forth on whether it's as bad as Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I only ever watched once, and now I've kind of got an appetite to maybe watch the three good ones and then the bad one, just to see if it was as bad as this one. It's like there's the bones of an idea of something in here. And it's like I told Jack before I went in, it's like I already know what my review is going to be, because I've seen kind of what everybody else is saying about it, and I've also seen the cast for this film, and it's my one-line review is going to be, not since Passengers have I seen a cast this fun have a movie this boring laid out. I don't know if I quite go that far. I don't think it's boring, but I think it's like really inessential, with a third act that like, well, they fucking swung for the fences, lads. And I know Kingdom of the Crystal Skull swings for the fences with nuking the fridge and aliens, but I'm of two minds as to whether what they do in this is a bigger reach. And it reminds me, I said this to Jack, and I don't want to say the specific movie because it will give away roughly what the ending is, but maybe we'll come back in a couple of weeks when Jack or some of the other guys have seen it. There is a very specific post-credits scene in a movie we ripped the piss out of at the time. The act 3 of this movie is basically that thing. I think like Harrison Ford is about as good in it as Harrison Ford in 2023 gets. Like, he's still very grumpy and grumbly and not really mobile.
The man's like nearly 80 now. Like,
he's 81, isn't he? I think.
I mean, we were kind of stretching the limits of what we would expect from him as Indiana Jones with the Crystal Skull. And, if you told me that they were going to do like a third Blade Runner and you'd be in that, I can see stuff they could do with that would be more like, I don't know, character driven and whatnot. But it's like, what the fuck can you do with Harrison Ford? God bless him, one of the greatest actors of our time. But what can you do with him at this point as Indiana Jones?
Now, what's interesting is, firstly, what I'll say is there's one scene very early on where he wakes up and he's got the top popped off. I'll tell you what, if we're all looking like that at 81, I'll take it all day. Apparently, the secret to looking like that at 81 is fucking weed. From what we know about Harrison Ford's personal life, weed and Callista Flockhart is the combination for the Fountain of Youth. They do a really kind of clever, for the most part, old school Hollywood of like, they shoot around him very well. Like, they do good cuts to clearly like a stunt indie doing things sometimes, with a couple of notable exceptions, and that is the introduction of CG. So I was kind of hoping that in the grand tradition of Indiana Jones there will be a lot of practical effects, and there are like some good practical effects in this, and some good kind of like, exploring tombs of this, that and the other, and solving clues and things like that.
Is it a Spielberg film?
Is it what?
Is it Spielberg?
Produced by Spielberg, but it's James Mangold directed it, which is
How was Phoebe Waller-Bridge in the movie as well?
So this is like such a weird casting choice for an Indiana Jones movie, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. But as far as I know, she did like a pass on the screenplay for it. So I think maybe that's how she got in. I was like, well, we've already got her in. We might as well get her to do double duty and pay her once. Yeah, like she's good. I don't know if I'd have her. I don't know. It's weird because like she's playing his goddaughter, Toby Jones's daughter, and like Toby Jones was like an oftentimes collaborator of Indy's during like the war. And now she's kind of like trying to carry on his legacy, trying to find this thing, but she's kind of gone down a different path in the years since Indy last saw her, and she's kind of like trying to sell this stuff just to make money off it rather than loving the history of it all and things like that. So he's trying to get her back on the straight and narrow, and there's a kid in the movie because now all these movies gotta have dumb fucking kids in them, but this kid isn't very irritating. Like he's actually fine. But he's very much there's a thing that happens in Act 3 where it's like, oh, that's the entire point of having this kid around, because there needed to be a character that could do this one function.
Is that kid gonna be hugging Harrison Ford when he's 100 on the red carpet in a few years' time?
I mean, I'll put it this way, like, I don't want to disrespect Ke-Huy Quan too much, but this kid is probably a better actor at his age than Ke-Huy Quan was as Short Round, that's for sure. But so there's some CG stuff in it that's real dodge. There's like a couple of chase sequences that incorporate CG that like they weren't even so elaborate that you couldn't have done it practically. The one egregious thing is that like almost all of the first 25 minutes happened during the war, so it's CGI de-aged Harrison Ford, which, like with a lot of the CGI de-age thing, he looks incredible when he is standing completely still and not speaking. Unfortunately, almost none of those sequences involve him standing still and not speaking. It's also like, even if it was much better quality CG, it's completely like the cognitive dissonance when you hear old Harrison Ford's voice coming out of young Harrison Ford's head would like break the suspension of disbelief. They definitely know, like they turn down all the shaders on the lighting for those scenes. It's in like nearly pitch black to try and hide the seams of it all. But like, I think it would have been fine at about half the length, the CGI de-age stuff, but it happens for so long that you're just looking at going, it just looks bad. It just looks bad. If they'd just done some still shots and then, like they did with the rest of the movie when old Indy just shot around him, it probably would have worked out pretty good.
The best one I think I've still seen is on the Boba Fett show, where because the first time we saw de-aged Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, it was alright. It was alright, but the second time was incredible. Like really, really impressive.
Was it in Rogue One they did Peter Cushing?
Yeah, they did Peter Cushing. That looks okay, but he wasn't on it for much.
And he was dead.
Yeah.
Well dead.
Absolutely.
Like that guy Matthew Broderick kills.
that guy is fucking dead, let me tell you. No, but the de-age Luke Skywalker thing, because they were in the bright light of day as well. It was like on a planet in the daytime, people running around and stuff. That looks amazing. So it is getting there. Like I think in a few years' time it is getting there, and then I think that starts opening up all those sort of weird moral questions. It's like, could I have like a 25-year-old Indiana Jones in my movie if I pay the estate of Harrison Ford like $20 million or something? I could just digitally recreate him and put him in the film.
Or we can just get Gemini Man too.
Yeah, I mean, that's what everyone's after, isn't it?
Well, it's Gemini, so there should be two.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Also, you end up with those moral quandaries like in The Flash recently, where that dude didn't know he was in The Flash until it came out.
I mean, that is just... It's just terrifying, isn't it, that they can start doing stuff like that? It will happen more and more, though.
Was he?
There's a likeness rights kind of issue with that, surely.
You see, the thing is, like, I imagine it's in your contract when they can use for promotional material, etc., etc. They can use your image, like, so that's how they get around it. But like, he had a tweet that was something like, "Oh, I'm sure someone would have told me if I was in the Flash."
Yeah, maybe it says like in perpetuity in those contracts, and they mean it.
Yeah.
200 years time, that guy is going to be in like Flash 17 or something. Who knows?
I think like my one takeaway from Indiana Jones, apart from like the third act being like, even for an Indiana Jones movie, batshit, like just making a mockery of physics and reality. I think my takeaway isn't that it was awful. Like, I didn't actively hate it, but it was just wholly unnecessary. Although I did one little spoiler that I gave Jack because it was too funny not to say, is like the degree to which they didn't want Shia LaBeouf back in these movies. They killed him off screen. There's just a scene where like Indy is just like, my son went off to war and died.
Shia LaBeouf died on the way back to his home planet.
I was like, yeah, that guy sucks. We're not having him back. So they didn't even want to use CGI the beef. They were just like, yeah, just kill him off. Let's be done with it. Which is an incredibly good bit. But yeah, like, I don't think, like, if you're somebody that has kids and your kids want to go see like a dumb family-friendly action movie, you probably won't have a horrible time. But I wouldn't, like, if you've got a choice of like within a couple of weeks you're gonna have a choice between like this, Barbie, Oppenheimer, and then shortly after Mission Impossible, like, this isn't the one you're picking, and it shouldn't be. But like, I'm not too mad at it, and it's quite short as well. Like, I think it might come in a hair under 2 hours, which is good, because, you know, with like time inflation in these movies, like the thing the world doesn't need is a 2.5 hour Indiana Jones movie. Like, the beauty of the adventure film, the family-friendly adventure film, is that they are 90 minutes in out.
Although it's kind of wild then, because you said that the first sequence, the CGI sequence as well, like 25 minutes. For me, that kind of seems like the pacing is really wild then, because for me, I'm thinking that this film's like 2.5 hours going in.
So like the first 20 minutes when they're doing that kind of drag is because you think it's just like a scene of a prologue where they're setting stuff up, and then it just like keeps going. But like, once it gets to present day, and once like the inciting event happens in, like, it's set in 1969, so it's like the backdrop of the when shit starts to go down is Indy is now retiring as a professor of archaeology in New York when, during the parade for the astronauts coming home, and there is like a bit of like dipping into history where it's in the trailers, where Indy rides on a horse through the parade past Neil Armstrong, which is they just have to, it's one of those, like, you know, whenever anything is set around the Kennedy assassination, like, people have to do it in their films. It's like they just couldn't resist doing it. But it kind of moves along at a clip after that, in fairness, I will say. And I do think, much as I think she was kind of an odd choice in terms of, like, for a franchise like Indiana Jones, I do think the kind of, like, the back and forth between her and Harrison Ford is pretty good. But yeah, that's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I should say, Mads Mikkelsen is just, like, he's great in everything, and he's just like, he doesn't get enough screen time, and it's very funny to see a guy who, like, absolutely just from a photograph, they were like, this guy can play an American guy who's a Nazi sympathizer. Boyd Holbrook is one of his henchmen, also a big James Mangold collaborator. Boyd Holbrook, who I like in things. But yeah, that's Dial of Destiny. What about you, Jacko?
So, as you well know, we watched Asteroid City yesterday, which is the latest in the Wes Anderson canon. And I guess I'm probably the highest person on the podcast on Wes Anderson. I don't know, Mark, you like a Wes Anderson movie, right? But
I've not seen many. I know you mentioned earlier, we were chatting, and we did see the Grand Budapest Hotel together. I did like that film a lot. But I've not seen a lot of his films, so I know his style. I probably would have an appreciation for his films, but it's kind of like a Sigur Rós album. I know I'd like it, but I'm not. You've really got to get me in the right mood to want to sit down and listen to it or watch it.
you appreciate it from afar. I'd be the middleman generally on Anderson. I about 50-50 love and hate him. I really love Royal Tenenbaums. I love Rushmore. I like Life Aquatic. I like Grand Budapest. I like French Dispatch. I hate the Darjeeling Limited with a passion of 1,000 burning suns. I don't like Bottle Rocket. I don't like Mr. Fox. I think like my thing is when like Wes Anderson gets too twee for his own good is when I've usually fallen off with him before. And like I gravitate more towards his incredibly nihilistic films, which I think is part of where we diverge on this, because funnily enough, for you being the high man and me being very much the kind of take him or leave him man, we had very surprising reactions to this movie.
Yeah, so first of all, I will say that all the things that I liked about the movie, I think the setting of the movie is incredible. The set of Asteroid City, the sort of 50s feel, the diners, the cabins, the middle of the desert. It feels, obviously, the whole film is framed around it being a play about this incident that happened in the desert in sort of, you know, generic part of America in the 50s. And the whole framing of it being narrated by Bryan Cranston, and the playwright being Ed Norton, and then the like lead actor I think being Adrian Brody. All of that stuff around the aesthetic of the movie is really good. But then I think Wes Anderson and aesthetic kind of go hand in hand. That's kind of his deal.
Yeah, his like meticulous set dressing and stuff like that. And yeah, I do love that. Like, it's definitely clearly supposed to be evocative of Roswell, the setting and the place. And then like Bryan Cranston is 1000% Rod Serling in Twilight Zone, and I love it. Like, he's doing just like a faultless takeoff of Rod Serling.
Yeah, exceptional mustache on him as well, I gotta say.
Yeah, tremendous soup strainer.
Yeah, so that is one of the things that I liked. I think generally the concept of the story and the framing of it I think is interesting. There's a lot to delve into. There's lots of subplots and things connected and interesting things to dig into and things to notice in the background. Like, you picked up on a moment where I didn't actually notice that it was in the movie, and that was Jeff Goldblum as credited in the credits. This is not too much of a spoiler, as the alien in the movie, and then you kind of notice in the background of a shot that I didn't see. So there's a lot to take in. My main issue with it is that I just felt like it under-delivered on all of the setup. So there was a lot of interesting plot threads that I mentioned, but none of them felt like they were really explored very well. Now, obviously, this one of the central themes of the movie from an emotional standpoint is characters dealing with grief and trauma and how they accept it. So obviously, if it's a play set in the 1950s, there's going to be a lot of that going on below the surface. So I'm not expecting a full emotional expose, and if I was, I wouldn't be watching a Wes Anderson movie in the first place, right? But I just think from a dialogue perspective, the way the characters interacted, I was expecting a bit more fleshed out stuff. And as you start into the movie, it's kind of, I don't know, I felt kind of alienated, no pun intended, from really buying into a lot of the characters, the exception of the boy who plays Cho, who is an absolute legend in this movie. Very, very good character. They just did not really feel like they developed a lot in the plot lines, and there were things happening that I just think they could have delivered a more interesting slant, just giving you a bit more, fleshed out a little bit, and it just didn't really happen. And as a result of it, the plot and the storyline and the central themes of the movie all felt just a little bit empty to me. And people are going to be like, oh, style over substance, or empty Wes Anderson movie, like the biggest criticism. Like, even as a Wes Anderson guy, I felt like it was a bit like ChatGPT wrote a Wes Anderson movie for me. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I revisit it at some point. I think I'm going to leave quite a big gap between this time and the next time I watch it, but I wasn't particularly impressed. It's maybe like a sort of 2.5 to 3 star out of 5 movie for me. I don't know. Asteroid City, it's one of those things where I think different people watching it will have completely different takes on it. It does leave a lot up to you to fill in the blanks. I'm not normally a person that wants things spoon-fed to me, but I did just feel like, because the actors that are in this movie are so incredible, and we've seen them all give amazing performances. I just felt like if they'd been given a little bit more, we could have had a more entertaining, rounded package. But yeah, that's where I stand on it. You were a bit higher on it than me, though.
I think it's funny because like we were walking out of the cinema last night talking about this, and the point on which we diverge is the same point that we agree is true of the movie, and that is the movie is about nothing. And for you, like as you've just outlined eloquently, that is where it falls apart for you. But for me, I think I admire so much the commitment to that the movie is about nothing, and by nothing I mean the whole message of the movie is trying to find a place where there is when there is no meaning, and we're all aware there is no meaning to, like, the whole collection of people that end up there are all like these various lost souls that either have no purpose and have no direction because of maybe a recent traumatic event, or because, you know, certain things happened in their lives prior to their arrival in Asteroid City, and now they're in search of meaning and they're not finding it, and they know they won't find it, but they're finding brief moments together in amongst all this nothingness, where there is kind of beautiful connections happening between people while they're there by this random happenstance. I find it to be a weirdly comforting nihilistic movie, and he's done the nihilism thing before. I think there's a certain element of nihilism to stuff like the Royal Tenenbaums and to Life Aquatic, but I don't think he's ever committed to the bit quite like this, and I think I totally get that it's so committed to the idea of, you know, there's a line in it that repeats, so there's like a meta movie happening outside the movie that you kind of described, which is like the bits we've all seen in the trailers that are full colour and beautiful in the desert is essentially a staged play, and you're cutting back to black and white moments with Edward Norton as the playwright who's writing the play and casting the play for Asteroid City, Adrian Brody who appears to be the director of the play, and then like the various cast members and stuff like that. And there's kind of like echoes going on in that meta movie, because there's like, they're talking about how even Edward Norton writing the play doesn't know how he's going to get certain things across in it, and the actors who are performing in the play, much like the characters they're playing, are going through the motions, and like Jason Schwartzman's character stops at a certain point. He's like, I don't understand the play still, you know, they're on closing night and he's just about to do the climactic scene, and he has this crisis and bails out, which is when you see Jeff Goldblum, and he's talking across like an alley to another actor, and he's talking about, I still don't understand the play, and like the kind of one of Wes Anderson's,
another actor just played by Margot Robbie.
Yeah,
we'll just chuck Margot Robbie in this movie for 5 minutes.
There was 2 bits that I thought were going to be really good. When I saw Jeff Goldblum as the alien, we see the alien at one point, but the alien doesn't speak or do anything, and it's clearly animated in, like, not real. There's just, it does a little cough, and I was like, if Jeff Goldblum is credited for just doing a cough in this movie, that's very funny. Unfortunately, well, I'm always happy to see Jeff Goldblum, but he does show up again later in the movie. I thought it was a bit, and then I saw Margot Robbie in the opening credits. Didn't know she was in the movie until then, and the only time you see her is in a still photograph, and I was like, is she one of the top billed people in this movie? She's only in a photograph. That would be a great bit. But no, there's a line that like they have in one of those meta scenes. I think it's the one with Margot Robbie. Something to the extent of like, I don't understand the play, but we will go on with it nonetheless. And there's like that, I think that is the message he's driving at about, like, you know, life and the human experience is like, we don't know why we're here, we don't know if there's a point to all this, but nevertheless we go on. And that's something I really liked about it, because that is like like I said, it's uber commitment to that being what's going on. And there are some, like, it's, if you love Grand Budapest Hotel, you probably won't like this, because Grand Budapest Hotel is probably the first time he did an out and out comedy,
snappy dialogue,
and this is not that. This is the Wes Anderson movies of old, where like everybody is stilted, like deliberately stilted, to sound like they are performing a community theater play, you know, rather than actual like genuine human conversation, and in terms of rhythm and in terms of the way people speak to each other and stuff like that. Like you said, there's all the usual Wes Anderson flares. Like, I think there's the way he, like, everybody talks about the sets and stuff like that, but I think just as if not more important than the sets, I've always found the Wes Anderson thing I like the most is how every shot is framed. You know, it's like, it just reminds me of that, you know, that YouTube series, Every Frame a Painting. You know, like, and that's sort of like every shot looks like some sort of painting that he does. And one of the things I kept being really fascinated by in Asteroid City is that very clearly when you see wide shots of Asteroid City where you're looking down the road, there's clearly a point at which an old Warner Brothers style painted set of the horizon starts, and I could never tell quite where Wes Anderson's artificial set blends into the actual painted set at the background. I thought that was great. And he's a guy that, like, again, a thing I like is that he's never afraid to show you the seams of things. You know, like, to point out to you is, yes, it's weird that in this world I use the same two kooky fonts all the time on everything. I really, really enjoyed it.
It's one of those films where you take what you think, you take what you would from it. The film doesn't give you the message to take away. It doesn't hit you over the head with anything specific. But to me, it wasn't so much that. And like you mentioned, the Lost Souls thing, but even from the Lost Souls perspective, it wasn't like these people were down and out. Like, there were really talented people there. There was like a talented actress, and there was like scientists and people who developed things, and
they were people who were doing it and didn't know why they were doing any of it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And like, I think you're following it through Augie's point of view, where he's just somebody who is like recently lost all meaning. So he tells the story often about he was a war photographer and he found great meaning from that, but now he's back and, you know, the wife has died and he's with the kids that he very quickly admits that he was thinking about abandoning with their grandfather, Tom Hanks. And, you know, Tom Hanks is somebody who seems to be living just a repetitive, meaningless existence, but he's happy with it.
And he's golfing away, he's fine.
And then his prick son-in-law that he's like, I don't love you, but I like you. You know, your family. Can't say I ever loved you. Is coming in to his life now, and he's trying to question that stuff. So yeah, no, like I really liked it. At the end of the day, like, you know, you're saying you might go up as high as 3. Like, I'm at 4, so we're not that far apart. You know, like, this is not a 5-star movie for me by any stretch. Like, look, maybe when I rewatch it, I might reevaluate and go lower or higher. But yeah, I really enjoyed. And even though I said it's not a comedy, there were a couple of moments that the two of us were hooting out loud at. In it, there was a couple of really well-placed dumb jokes in it.
Have either of you seen Beau is Afraid yet?
No. I am an Ari Aster fan, but I haven't had the chance yet.
If you want to experience a 3-hour panic attack, enjoy.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that it should be recommended for you to see an Ari Aster movie.
Well, I mean, I didn't like watch it fully. Maria was watching it, and I'd kind of bounce in and out. I was in the room with her, and every time I look at the screen, I'm pretty sure I was watching a different film. It's intense, is all I'm going to say. I look forward, and you were kind of talking there about, like, what does the film mean, what to represent, like, being spoon-fed information. That film gives you very little to work with. That throws a lot at you, so, yeah.
Did you ever see Midsommar?
No, I've not seen that, or was it Hereditary?
Hereditary, yeah.
I've not seen either of those.
Don't.
I'm good, thanks.
Midsommar's great, though.
They're both great, but I'm thinking, like, think about Mark. Think about the type of film Mark likes, and think about what he very much does not like being stuck watching.
But Midsommar's almost so OTT that it's funny. I found Midsommar quite amusing.
Hereditary is genuinely unnerving.
Anything that's, like, particularly stressful or intense for long periods of time, which Beau is Afraid is, but it's so fucking surrealist with its approach that you just kind of zone in and out of like what it gives to you, because I really would like you two to see it, just for you to kind of try and dissect what the fuck is happening with that thing.
I think Midsommar is a stressful experience, but I think like you would find the Hereditary viewing experience incredibly unpleasant.
I will continue to not see that film, thanks.
I love it though. Right, I suppose we should probably talk about video games. Here we are. Where are we now, Mark? On the road. We're about 75 kilometres away, or 70 kilometres away from Cork City.
Yeah, we're enjoying the country roads at the moment, but we are. The sun has finally come out. I can leave the wind wipers off for a bit, and we should be there in about an hour or so.
Yeah. So I'll start with a very quick one. Me and Jack have one game in common that we'll talk about a little bit when I move over to him. Oh, two games in common. But I want to talk about my first one very briefly and come on for my victory lap, for I have my platinum trophy, gentlemen. It's the end of Elden Ring chat until the DLC comes out later this year. Yes, I finally beat Radagon, the Elden Lord, and the Elden Beast. It took quite a few tries, but it's over, it's done. All the endings in that game are fucking rad, man. They are heavy metal, every single one of them. You're not going to be disappointed with any of them, and there's like 6. But you only have to get 3 to get the platinum, and it's really easy if you have PS Plus to do the, like, you can save scum, so there's like a save point right before you trigger the ending. Like, so when you beat an Elden Ring boss, a new Site of Grace appears. Yeah. So you save at the Site of Grace, then you trigger, you trigger one ending, then delete your save, download the cloud save, just do the ending again. So really, like, instead of playing the game 3 times, you're adding about 1.5 minutes total. So it works out pretty well, because like, much as I love it and it's easily slipped into my top 10 of all time, I don't think I have the gumption to tackle that game 3 times back to back to get a platinum, so that was the way I was doing it.
I don't think I could handle you playing it another 2 times and talking about it on the podcast for another year or so.
Fucking love it so much, man. Just wait till me and Garrett are playing new Elden Ring stuff on the podcast at the same time in a few months, if it does come out this year. Maybe it'll get delayed and you get a nice break, but beat all 165 bosses in it, so it's conclusively beaten now. Platinum trophy achieved. Loved it. Seeing as me and Jack have 2 in common, do you want to go next, Mark?
Yeah, so Garrett mentioned last week that he was pretty confident that I would hate Final Fantasy 16, and I'm at the moment where I've pressed L3 and R3. I have accepted the truth, and that's about 8-9 hours in, I'd say, and I can absolutely see while playing it all of the things about the game that I would hate, where it feels like a weakened MMO, where it feels like it's pulling all the bad parts of Ragnarok and kind of modern AAA game design. And you've never seen a game so at odds with itself about what it wants to be. And you get these with these games that are 35 years old now in terms of like the IP. And it's like, what does a Final Fantasy game mean in 2023? And, Garrett and Jack were talking last week, and even like the week before with the demo, that it's not really a Final Fantasy game now. But it still has these little trappings where it's still trying to kind of tell you, oh no, this is still a Final Fantasy game. But then it kind of muddles itself. Like, so I was playing the other day and I realized, like, you go into the menu, or just while you're playing the game, there's like 3 separate fonts in the UI. You've got like one which is this kind of medieval, dare I say, Elden Ring-esque font that shows up when you have like enemies slain, or like when you've got like text or whatever. You've got a fairly kind of generic, nondescript, standard text font that they use for whatever. And then you've got there's like a kind of like the modern Final Fantasies for the HP and the numbers. There's like this kind of very slick, futuristic looking font that they use. And they all kind of bounce off of each other, and it all just looks like the game just can't decide what one it wants to go with. And I do think it would have been better just to stick with like the kind of medieval one and stick with that setting. But then as a whole, like the game as itself, it's got this medieval setting, but it can't kind of like fully commit to it because it's got to throw in, you know, like fucking a giant fucking Ifrit and Bahamut and whatever, and you got all these other bits and pieces that they just kind of keep clashing against each other.
I see. So, like, you're saying the fonts are a metaphor for the fact that they can't commit to a style. I genuinely was like, if Mark has played like 10, 15 hours of Final Fantasy and his biggest takeaway is the fonts, that is hilarious to me.
No, it was one of the things I noticed. And like another thing as well, so the game has a leveling up system because it's a Final Fantasy game, you have a leveling up system.
Sure.
But it's completely fucking pointless because it's such a linear, like it is, as Garrett has kind of pointed out, it's such a linear game. And yes, you can go back to older levels, and I have like to get up experience points to unlock other parts of the skill tree, but it's purely there as this is a Final Fantasy game, therefore it must have a leveling up system. But the game is laid out such like a Platinum Games type of game that doesn't use that because it doesn't need it, that it is purely just there as a, well, we kind of need to have experience points. Like, how do you feel about that, Jack?
Well, I mean, how do I feel about the game in general? It just doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy game. I see a leveling up system, but it doesn't feel like it means a lot in the same way that it used to. And they used to have, you know, really detailed skill trees in Final Fantasy before other RPGs were massively on skill trees, but they felt well designed and they would lead you in particular directions to flesh out different parts of different characters. I don't really feel like any of that. Like you say, it's there incidentally because it is Final Fantasy, therefore we have to do this thing. And I still don't know if I like the way the battles happen in the game. I feel like you can cheese a lot of the battles by, you know, running around a lot and just, you know, moving, dodging and using magic and from afar rather than like getting up close. And it feels like a lot of the strategic elements of what I like about Final Fantasy have kind of disappeared a little bit, and I don't like that. I like a battle strategy, I like a turn-based combat system, I like there to be something about it. It's a lot more hack and slash, and I don't know, these are things that might turn you off a bit more, I would say, Mark, actually. But
well, this is the thing, because the problem with the game as a whole, and I should kind of like say that I think I am enjoying the game as a whole, even though I'm going to spend most of this segment talking about the things I don't like about it. I do think I like the game, but with the combat, it's so surface level, it feels so incredibly hollow.
Yeah.
And you can see where they overcompensate by the fact that you've got particle effects just fucking blaring on the screen at all times. And, you know, you'll have the big kind of kaiju battle at the end of the big epic climactic fight. But the problem with like all games with kaiju battles is they always just come down to like a quick QTE event or just hammer the square button at certain points. There's not actually any fucking depth or strategy to those moments. So it's purely just, it's the spectacle. And, you know, the game does spectacle for sure. Like the gorilla fight is fucking ridiculous. The bit where you fight like the imposter version of yourself and you have you turn into Ifrit, that spectacle, yeah, it's got that, but sort of in the same way that Bayonetta 3 has spectacle, and it's like it's big and spectacular, but in terms of what I'm doing, you know,
as a multimedia experience, it kicks ass. The game looks good to me, the game sounds good to me, the dialogue is good, the way everything is stylized to me, I do like. It just, the hollowness is so evident in the game, and that was one thing that you could never accuse Final Fantasy of. Like, they would overdevelop the slightest little quirky person in a town that you would go and speak to, or there'd be, everything felt original in some nice way.
Every fucking NPC slash like unimportant side quest is so ripped out from the most uninteresting MMO you've ever played, and it's in everything. It's the dialogue, it's the still camera shots where people are talking but the camera doesn't like track with them as they sort of move around. It's all baked into that kind of like MMO experience.
Yeah, like a PC MMO from the mid-2000s.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we talked about the combat there as well, and I'm sorry, Jack, but right, with Ragnarok, one of the things that we said about it
Just shitting on it till the day it dies.
One of the biggest issues we have with that game is like you would upgrade your weapons, but there was nothing there that kind of felt like, alright, this weapon now has 2 extra points of attack. There was nothing really there that you kind of felt that in the combat. And it's the same thing with this. Like if you change the weapon, got a really powerful weapon in, Final Fantasy 6, 7, one of the older ones, you usually typically felt it. And with this, you're upgrading your swords, but there's nothing there that really kind of feels like, a boss. And I think part of this is because of the linearity of the combat. Like the enemies are scaling up with you, so you're doing more damage, but the enemies are, obviously going up with you. So there's no kind of real difference in terms that you don't really feel that extra kind of attack point that you've added on having any kind of impact. And so, and also, by the way, with some of the boss fights, I don't know why they even fucking have health bars, because you'll do half the damage, and then the boss fight will end, or it'll go into a different phase, and then you're back to full health again. And it's just there's all these kind of odd quirks. I'm I don't understand why the game is being made the way it's being made,
Yeah, they made a lot of choices, and I don't know. Why do all that? Do you know what, as well? I'm so sick of every NPC I speak to being like, hey, you piece of shit. No one, and you go and help them. You go and help them do a quest, and you go and help them do this, that, and the other, and they're like, yeah, thanks, whatever.
I mean, Clive does have a Mickey Mouse tattoo on their face. I get it.
I know, but everyone fucking hates you. There must be a few people that are just you know what, I don't mind this geezer, he's alright.
But what I do like about Clive is for a lot of the really low menial tasks, he always really reluctantly agrees to do it like a petulant child, and I do enjoy that a lot. And the thing is, I actually so a couple of things that I really do like. Obviously, the music is fucking exceptional across the board. The battle music is probably some of my favourite music of the year and the last couple of years. I do like Clive. I like Sid. I think the interplay of those two is really well. I think Sid is he's a bust.
Sid's fucking cool.
And you kind of mentioned last week, and I agree. And for me to say this, the voice acting is probably some of the strongest I've heard in a video game.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Not that there's a high bar for you.
Yeah. And I was talking again about all of the things that it does that piss me off of Ragnarok, but the biggest thing with Ragnarok that kills that game
is it's for cunts.
No, is the
Hey, all of you.
Is the pacing. That's what kills that game. Is the pacing where you're on the back of a yak for 2.5 hours doing fuck all. This game skips along.
We just passed a massive cow made out of corrugated iron.
This game skips along at a pace, no kind of set piece, no sequences going on for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So even though you might have a dungeon where there's not really a lot going on, it doesn't look particularly interesting, it doesn't last long enough to really grind your gears. If it keeps up this pace for the next 30 hours or so, the combat's probably going to get to a point where you're in the open fields and you're coming across just a small batch of enemies here and there. That's going to do my head in fairly shortly. Outside of that, I think I'll be able to tolerate it if it kind of continues at this pace. And I do think the story and its execution has been compelling enough that, even though it has a lot of things that annoy me, I would say that I'm oddly enjoying my time with it. So, yeah, that's where I'm at currently.
I'm still on the fence, man. I don't know. I think, but part of that is because you're approaching it as a fresh experience. I'm approaching it with knowledge of what it could be, or what it has been, or what it should be, and maybe I just need to put some of that to one side and try and analyze what is in front of me rather than what I want to be in front of me, and that's potentially part of my problem, I suppose, with the game. But look, I'm gonna keep playing it. It's a Final Fantasy game. I gotta at least try and finish it. That just is the way it is with all the Final Fantasy games, and then kind of take my cue from there on out. But yeah,
I bet you can't wait to get to my Final Fantasy 13 review in about 5 years' time.
I probably everything that you say about that game that you didn't like, I would definitely agree with it. In fact, you don't have to just play one game, Mark. You gotta play 3 if you want to complete that.
I'm not sure I'll play Lightning Returns, I'll say that much.
I think you have to.
Yeah? Alright.
If you can, here's the thing, if you can explain to me what happens in Final Fantasy 13. Now, bear in mind, I'm a Hideo Kojima fan, so if you can explain to me what happens in Final Fantasy 13, I'd be greatly appreciative of that.
Also, just to keep us in wacky corner here as I talk about Final Fantasy games, let me talk about Metal Gear Solid 2, as I've completed that now. I I don't know what I think of it. I knew going in that there's obviously the bit where the game goes fucking off the rails, and I do think that for the most part it handles that execution. And certainly when you go back and you think about like the way that the Colonel's been talking throughout the game, and there's that kind of like, he sort of sounds like a real person, but something isn't quite there as humane as he was in the original Metal Gear. But I think the problem, and partially just because the way I was playing it, I was in that area for a while, so I got to the point that he started doing a bunch of the prompts, the dialogue bits several times over. So the kind of charm, or the kind of like the just like strangeness of what was happening kind of lost its appeal, not quickly, but it got there because I was getting the same dialogue bits, like Scissor 61 or whatever the fuck he says.
It's because you were getting your ass killed repeatedly, to be fair.
Yeah. But I do think that, and a lot of it, I think you have to come to it in the mindset of like, if you were playing this in 2001, this whole thing, if you got to that point because you got pissed off because you were playing as Raiden and not Snake, I can see how you would play this and think, holy shit, what is this? But I do think that like the last bit of the game, like I still can't tell you what the actual motivation of Solid as Snake was, or what the fuck he actually is meant to be in this game. Like Raiden and Snake, I get a good grasp of those. Revolver Ocelot, I feel like Ocelot, I'm going to be not knowing what the fuck his deal is for the next 3 or 4 games that I play with him in.
Ocelot is always on everyone's and no one's side at the same time.
He's always coming out on top.
He always comes out on top and bottom, and his arm is also possessed by, their dead brother.
And I think, like...
Just breezes right by that.
And I will say, even though they do a few quality of life features from the first one, like the camera movements a little bit, it gives you a little bit more room to work with. There's much more, there's a first person mode that you can use now. It's all still baked in that system where it just feels a little bit too fucking clunky for my liking, and I'm still surprised that they're doing the MGS3 remake first and then not doing 1, then 2, then 3, because I think there's a version of this game where there's like a slightly more modernized controls. I'll be curious when I start playing MGS3 Subsistence. Is it Subsistence? Is that what it's called? Subsistence. I'll be curious when I start playing with that control scheme and to see how much more I get on with it, and then really kind of think about if there was an MGS2 version of this, if I'd have gotten on board with it more. But again, I can't sit here and say that I hated my time with it. I do, as I do with Kojima as a whole, I do appreciate what he does. I think there are a number of scenes in that game that go on about 15 minutes too fucking long. The underwater section can fucking kick rocks. But, I'm glad that I played it.
So excited for when you get to Guns of the Patriots. I think stuff goes on too long.
The underwater section does not last that long, though.
No, I will say that I was kind of concerned. I was going in thinking it was going to be like this sort of 40-45 minute segment. It's not that long at all.
I thought it was going to be your water temple.
But it still can kick rocks.
Look, here's the thing. You get a Hideo Kojima game, you're going to get a lot of ideas in it, right? Not every single one of them is going to be a home run every single time, but you are going to get originality. You are going to get odd pacing where some things are hurry up and then some things are slow down. You are going to get a lot of cutscenes that explore a lot of odd themes. I played this when I was 14, Mark. It blew my tiny mind.
I think, like, with Kojima, like, even the failures are interesting.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
I'd much rather that than somebody that just, like, skirts along, not taking any risks. I totally get the, like, sometimes when you're stuck in the middle of a choice you don't like, you're like, maybe he takes too many risks. But, I love that crazy bastard.
And that's the thing. I've always said I appreciate, and I would be in agreement that his risks and his failures, they usually come from a place of interest more than anything else. I guess my biggest question for you at this point is, what do you think I'll hate more, MGS4 or Death Stranding?
MGS4 by a long way. Because the cutscenes are pretty relentless on it.
At least you're physically doing stuff most of the time in Death Stranding. I think you'll think conceptually Death Stranding is the dumber game, but you will have a less fun time because there's more put the controller down and wait a long time in Metal Gear Solid 4.
It's deep Metal Gear Solid lore as well, so I hope you'll be paying attention in the first 3 games.
So, like,
I'm still not fully aware of who the Lali Lululo are,
so like, you know, Jack plays through Guns of the Patriots like at full mast, like tumescent with lore.
Yep.
But you, my friend, will not be satisfied.
And that's the thing, because again, like with MGS2, for the last kind of quarter of the game, there are aspects of like the meta-ness of it that I got, but in terms of the actual point A to point B plot beats, I had no fucking idea what was going on. But there you go. If anyone wants to contribute to my PS3 fund so I can play MGS4, you can donate. Find all my contact details at twitch.tv/Lithium Project.
Yeah, I still have my PS3. I wish we lived in the same country. I would just lend you it.
Are you gonna do? So you're gonna do 3. Are you gonna do then Peace Walker and Portable Ops?
I mean, I have 6 PSPs, so, you know.
So then by the time you get through those, maybe Volume 2 of the Metal Gear collection will be out with presumably MGS4 on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll do 3, and then I think I'll probably take a break. I don't know what I'll do next afterwards, because MGS3 is going to probably take me the rest of the summer to get through. Yeah. So I'll probably want to take a break.
What drive you
that.
even crazier? David Cage's...
I can tell you quite simply, I do not hate myself enough to put myself through that.
Well, Jack, let's get to... Is there anything you've been playing yourself that we don't have in common, or we just get straight into it?
I know. I mean, I chipped in with Mark. It's Final Fantasy 16 is really the only thing I've been playing.
Grand. Well, I'll start off with the game I had actually forgotten we both played as well yesterday. And I've been playing a bit this week. Fight Forever, the AW game.
Ah, yes.
Which is a really interesting one. Because it's not a bad game. It's not a great game, though. Not by any stretch. It's not a ham sandwich either. The thing about it is, right, and it's like, this is not a new thought on the matter whatsoever. This seems to be the overwhelming consensus, is that for better or worse, we got our new No Mercy game.
Yeah.
Mechanically, like in the moment-to-moment gameplay feels good, feels dumb, feels fun, right? The problem is there is fuck all to do in the game. Like I've gotten a little bit into the career mode, but the career mode only spans 1 year and then you're done. I wouldn't expect them first time out of the gate to have something the equivalent of universe mode, which is like the procedurally generated basically career mode in the WWE games now.
Does the career mode do, like, because obviously, you know, we're really they're pulling from No Mercy, because with the career mode, depending on like different things that you do, different matches you win or lose, like it has like branching paths. Does it do that kind of thing?
Yeah, so there seems to be, anyway, like I said, I'm only a few weeks in, and you can do it with an existing wrestler, or you can do it with your creator wrestler, but from what I've heard from other people is that the best path to unlock everything, because things like so Brody Lee you get through career mode in it, or as a Road to the Elite I think it's called, or something to that effect. I don't have my notes in front of me because we are, as we mentioned, in a car. But the best way to unlock everything is to go with a created wrestler, because there are some things that only the created wrestler can unlock on their path. But you do things like the very first thing you do in AEW when you get signed is do a casino battle royal. And there doesn't seem to be a fail state in as much as you can't get past it unless you win the battle royal. So just right there, week 1, you're branching paths. So I won the battle royal, so I'm getting a title shot. I know people can just from different images I've seen get variations that you can end up with multiple or all the belts by the end of career mode if you just don't lose. But yeah, how far it goes, I know there's wacky stuff in there. We've all seen the screenshots about Chris Jericho in Washington DC talking about taking over the country by force. Yay. Stuff like that. There's some real cheeky, definitely at least one of the people on the writing staff at THQ.
That's pretty Omega.
They knew what they were doing. There's some cheeky references in there that I do appreciate. But again, it comes back to even the exhibition mode. So you're playing exhibition mode, and we were having a good bit of fun with it. But the limitations on the different modes you have. So like something that is, now the one I said to everybody I've talked to about straight away, and I'll take what people said to me in response, is I couldn't understand why there's not a cage match in this game, because like the way I go, like if this is the No Mercy inheritor, like No Mercy was able to whack up a cage match. I was like, why can't you? And somebody said to me, well, maybe like it isn't as high a priority because it's not like AEW is a big notorious cage match promotion. They've only done a handful of 3 or 4 cage matches, and I'd say, right, okay, fair enough, but one thing that is absolutely a staple of AEW that's not in this game is trios matches. There's no trios matches. There's no, you talk about AEW staples, no blood and guts, which is an AEW staple. There is supposed to be, because someone data mined it this week, kind of peeking a bit into some news for this week, someone data mined the game, and there is going to be a 30-man online Stadium Stampede Battle Royal mode, which sounds fun. The mini games in it that we saw teased a little bit in the build-up are like, they're fine, but they're ones you'll play like 2 or 3 times with people and then you're done. There's one that's like you've got 4 people in a ring and they're dropping the double or nothing poker chips into the ring, and one of them gets you points but slows you down, and then they also randomly drop bombs. So you have to try to knock your opponents down so you can get more chips than them, and also avoid the bombs when they come down, because you'll lose points if you get bombed. So that's fun a couple of times. There's one that's like an AEW trivia contest that's, again, maybe fun once or twice. There's just a lot of stuff in the game that's an unnecessary pain in the arse as well. So like Barry outlined this on his very lengthy launch day stream, so if you want like a really authoritative look inside, as we go through new Two-Pot House, County Cork, there's a grocery store there on the corner that's half grocery store, half pub, with a little bit of post office thrown in.
And a nursery.
Yeah. But yeah, there's like a couple of things that are just like, on his stream he was talking about how, like, so for FTR are DLC, but FTR are not set up as a stable or a tag team on the game. You have to put them in one. There is stuff like, everybody talked about how, as a little cheeky Easter egg, they've added the ability for you to toggle. So the exploding barbed wire deathmatch, which is a hoot, by the way, we played a couple of them yesterday. There is a toggle to change between proper heavy-duty explosions and the little fucking shite ones that happened when they actually did that match. There is no discernible, I don't know where that toggle is on the game, and I've looked everywhere, and it may well be a thing you unlock in career mode, that you have to play through the shitty version of the match to do it, but again, not communicated to you. Much like in the WWE games, there's like, if there's a character that's to be unlocked, you'll see their kind of head blacked out, or you'll see like it is them but it says locked over it. Not the case in this game. So if you didn't know from the marketing material that Brody Lee is an unlockable in career mode, you still wouldn't know playing it. God, what was the other one? Is for like alternate gear that you unlock in the shop, you have to manually apply it to the characters by going into the editor. Just stuff like that I think, if they're really good and adaptive at listening to player feedback, look, it's stuff that shouldn't have been this way from the start, but it's stuff that's an easy fix, to be able to just like update gear in a patch.
Crucially, because obviously, this is a lot of the stuff, and I was watching some of Barry's stream as well, but crucially, like, in a 1-to-1 match, 1 versus 1 match, is it like mechanically a 1-to-1 to No Mercy or those N64 Aki games?
So it's not, in terms of like controller inputs, it's not the same, but like, I'll move over to Jack now for his impressions, but like what I was saying to Jack as we sat down, and what I've experienced in my few hours with it, is even if the control inputs are not exactly the same, there's like an intangible game feel that is very reminiscent of those old Aki games.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I mean, you've covered a lot of things I might have brought up. One of the things I love about the game is the impact of the moves and the way they feel. Like when you kick someone in the head, it's a satisfying like chunk, like the screen little movement and like a vibration on the controller. Like the impact of the moves and just general fighting and striking and stuff in the game is really good. I find the reversal system a little bit inconsistent, but I don't know if there's like tutorials and stuff in the game that help you out with the timings of that.
So there is like a tutorial mode you can do at the start, and like it lays it out pretty quickly in that it's like one of your shoulder buttons is to block strikes and the other one is to block grapples. But so the WWE games now do a thing where when a grapple's coming in, there's like a little indicator above your head which one it's going to be, so that you can try react quick enough. Whereas with this, it's more of a kind of like No Mercy. It's more of an intuitive. You have to guess if they're going for a grapple or a strike. So you have like, it's a flip a coin basically as to whether you're going to be able to. There's like some fun. The collision detection is mostly fine, but then like when it goes wrong, it goes quite wrong. Not too often when we played it.
Yeah, like if you're getting up, there's certain points of the character getting back to their feet animation that they can't get hit during. So if you go like for a stomp, or just like an axe handle to the floor or something, if you miss it while the other character is getting up, you're then down and then they're standing up and then they can do a move on you. And so stuff like that doesn't feel quite right. It's just a little bit off. I think, so the two things about the character models, I think a lot of the character models for the actual wrestlers look really, really good. Things like CM Punk looks really good, Adam Cole, Kenny, they all look really cool. But I saw the Creator Wrestler that you made, Dave, and it's like a noticeable drop-off in quality between the created characters and the actual legitimate in-game characters.
There's just no options.
Yeah, that's one of the big criticisms of being like, it's a really limited creation suite, and it's something that like if you're going to address something in a patch that gives longevity to these games, it's beefing out that creation suite. And I know, like, I remember the WWE games did this when they switched to the PS4 generation. They stripped out most of the character creation stuff so they could get a handle on the new engine. And I wonder, is it a similar kind of case? Because like the more variations of hair and body type that you allow people to fuck with, and the more sliders you allow people to fuck with, the more back end work has to be done, that like the game just doesn't get broken as soon as this guy tries to like walk through the ropes. Some things that are back from the good old days of wrestling games are that like the animation of someone holding the belt, they just cannot figure that out. Just cannot fucking figure it out.
It's like their arms are up and then the belt's just kind of been superimposed somewhere near their hand.
The belt is always like completely, the strap is completely open and just flapping about in a way that no one ever holds a belt and stuff like that. But it's like, it's one of those where I couldn't put it in most disappointing. I couldn't put it anywhere near it, because I think like for the last 6 or 8 months, this is pretty much the game we expected on arrival. Like we knew it was going to be short in some ways. We could see by the preview images of the gear how like this was a snapshot of like 2021, late 2021, early 2022 is where everyone's gear seems to be at.
And it was fun to play. Like me and you sitting down playing it, I had a good time. It was silly, we were clowning around with it. That was what my minimum standard of expectation was. Just make a fun game to play and then you can build on it from there. And they have a solid base that they can build on with this.
You know, one of the biggest mistakes they made is they just announced the thing too fucking early. You know, like they should have announced this thing maybe a year ago.
And it was a full price game.
Well, and this is the other thing I was going to talk about as well, because I'm not intending to buy it as it currently is, because I just don't think there's enough there. My concern is like what the roadmap looks like and how they're going to price this thing out. If I imagine there's going to be a bunch of quality of life features that will come in a patch that will be free, but if they have like new matches, new modes, new wrestlers, all this stuff that they put under a season pass and a battle pass, there's no way I'm going to buy this game, because if the game had come out, and I do think what we've got here is a case of like they just had to ship this thing. Sometimes a game has to be shipped, and that's just it. And I get that. Like making games is a nightmare, and so sometimes you just have to get out the door. But if they know that they got all these things coming, and there's going to be like this 20 quid DLC pack or this 20 quid season pass or battle pass, whatever. At that point there, I'm never going to buy this thing because I just refuse to buy unless the game kind of drastically drops in price. Because I just think the idea of paying full price for something and then having all of this on top, like if they brought this game thing out and it'd been like 20 quid and it's like a base pack and like we've got all these things coming in the future, I could possibly stomach that. But as a full price game with what I think, and we'll see obviously what comes, but with what I think will be a bunch of additional content that you have to pay for, I can't get on board with that.
It's an interesting one because I wonder will it do the thing that I wish FIFA had done, where like the first time you buy FIFA it's the full price, and then for like the seasonal updates and stuff like that, I wish they did that where like FIFA is just FIFA. Like, cause crucially something I've thought about is that this game isn't called AEW 2023.
Yeah.
It's called Fight Forever. So is the idea that this is the hub and they will just build and build and build?
I do think it's going to be more of a live service thing for the time being, at least. I get it. It's like you've got this thing out the door. You can just improve on this for the time being because they've got like, from what it sounds like, they've got the base gameplay mechanics down. As long as that's working, you can build. Everything's the meta game on top of that. So I think for them, to some degree, I imagine it was like, look, is the core gameplay there? Yeah, right. Fuck it. Now we can figure out trios matches, cage matches, wrestlers, blah, blah, blah. Which is not the worst strategy to have, at least.
I think blending it in a way that I think that will help the audience either sustain or grow, so that there's like a bunch of, like you said, quality of life stuff, and the odd, like, say, hey, we've added the collision arena, hey, we've added like these things to the creation suite, all that's free, and hey, like if you want to pay the, like, let's put a price point at like a season that's a year long is like 20 quid, and you'll get like 10 wrestlers in your season for that. I'd be like, like for 10 or 20 quid, I'm already in on the game. I might go with that, depending on who it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a very price point sensitive thing, I think, at this stage. Like, if by the time you are looking at that season pass mark and the game itself has dropped to 40 quid, it's like you get 40 quid and then the season pass is 20, like you're still talking like less than people paid for the launch.
I mean, if they're telling me I have to pay additionally for like Ethan Page and the Ass Boys, I'm probably going to pass.
Unless the Ass Boys get to come out to Many Men on it, which would rock. That's the one thing that's disappointing but entirely predictable is some of the licensed music that's not present. They did not stump up for Jefferson Starship for Orange Cassidy.
That sucks.
The one that was pretty disappointing was they didn't shell out to Impact for Christian Cage's music.
What?
Yeah.
What's it come out to then?
It's like a Mikey Ruckus facsimile of the it's not a million miles off, but it's not the one we want, which makes me worried that when our Lord and Savior Jeff Jarrett comes to Fight Forever, that he won't come out to Bwee Woo, which will just break Garrett's little heart, I think. So we don't want that. But like I think it's far too enjoyable to be disappointment of the year or ham sandwich game of the year. I think it's lost in that ether. I certainly wish some of the issues weren't there, but in terms of a fun sitting beside someone experience, and like as a game that I use wrestling games for, like, every so often having the itch to like have a bunch of dumb matches and then like not play it obsessively. It's gonna scratch that itch.
Does it currently have online multiplayer?
Yes, I haven't tried any. There's like ranked matches, and then there's like there's private lobbies and stuff like that, but I don't know what the netcode is like. I don't know how it's functioning on there, so I can't speak to that. I don't know if Barry tried on his stream or not. We'll probably talk to him about it in about 31 minutes to be exact at this stage. But Jack, we played another game. that is, I think if we had a category for Hoot of the Year, it's going up there. It's Dave the Diver, which has been around in some form since last year, but went 1.0 last week on Steam. So it's got a proper release. It makes it eligible for Game of the Year. This game is like... It's a lot of things. I think you said very, very early doors, Jack. It's a very busy game. So what it is you play a guy called Dave, who is a diver, and the game is like 3 or 4 things in one, and I think now that like it's opening up, I think it's doing everything well. But poor Jack had the experience, and I'll kind of go to him now in a second, but I had the tutorial when I was playing it by myself, and you had to hop in after the tutorial trying to figure everything out. But it's part... like half your day is spent diving underwater and in the big blue hole, as they call it, which is very good. You're diving into the big blue hole every day, and every time you dive underwater, I think the in-story reason for this is like there's like the mineral composites in the water, so every time you come in it's procedurally generated the way all the coral and stuff like that is, and what fish you find and different stuff like that, and you have to go collect all your fish. You've got your harpoon gun, you've got a melee weapon, and then you'll start unlocking weapons and stuff, and then you're able to, you know, through the way you earn in the game, you're able to upgrade the amount you can carry. You can upgrade your scuba suit, which allows you to dive deeper. You're limited by your oxygen tank is always ticking down, so you can increase the amount that you have in your oxygen tank, even though underwater you do come across oxygen refills at random intervals, and you're able to upgrade your weapons and your harpoon gun and stuff like that. Then once you've like collected all your fish for the day, the night part of the game is you going over to work in Banco's sushi restaurant, where you are serving customers. Banco is making up recipes from the fish you caught, and you're able to like research new recipes using the same fish to get more money, and then you're running back and forth to serve customers as he's making the food, and it's all on a timer, so like customers are getting more and more pissed off as you don't bring their food. And then if food is prepared by Banco and you don't get to the person, they get pissed off and leave. You just have to throw out that food, which 1 loses you money, and 2 costs you time, because you have to get rid of it out of your hand. You can't carry more than 1 dish at a time.
What's the perspective? Like, because I'm thinking Overcooked immediately. Is it using that kind of like overheads?
No, it's like it's kind of like front on the bar, and you've kind of got a line of people either side of the bar, but they're kind of like offset from one another, so you can see them in one continuous line when you're moving left to right. And then as you, literally the bit I was playing last night after Jack went to bed, it starts opening out, that part of the day opens out into more of a management sim, where you can start hiring staff to help you out and upgrading staff and training them. So there's like, there's really deep, and there's RPG elements going on in here, like there's loads of shit and different side quests where you have to explore shit. But Jack, okay, can I just say,
I'm watching The Bear at the moment, and there is mass potential for a crossover here between this and that.
100%. Jack, what are your thoughts so far on Dave the Diver?
I had a really good time just shooting a bunch of fish, Dave.
Fucking Jack got in and I was explaining to him how the harpoon gun worked, and I didn't need to, because Jack just went full John Rambo down there.
Yeah, it was just incredibly tempting to get a weapon and just shoot the fish. I could not help myself. It was just a lot of fun. Oh, and also knifing the fish as well.
You were just like stab crazy until I told you also get a gun.
Yeah, I think the actual mechanics of catching the fish, pretty much everything in the game took me a while to get used to the controls, and I think that is, as you pointed out, because I didn't go through a tutorial, and it sort of builds stuff in. And once I got a handle for where we were, Dave, like even the bit that we played for like maybe an hour or so, and it started building in different layers in that hour, and it sounds like since you've carried on playing, it's built in even more. It's an incredibly well put together package. Like the characters in it, even though they're sort of, 2D like pixel characters, they feel like they have personality. The quirks and the fun of the game are great. The blue hole, the underwater area is fun. It's to go and explore and see what different things that you can find and turf out and shoot mercilessly in the head with a big gun to capture. It's cool. It was like a whole random side quest that we were on about trying to find some sort of ancient artifact, and when we found it, a giant squid turned up and looked at us and then buggered off again, and I'd love to know what's going to happen with that.
Proper fucking Kraken-sized squid.
Dave saved a pink dolphin from being captured, which was like the shiny version of a dolphin. Yeah, it's a bit mad. It gave me similar vibes to Golf Story in a way, where it's like, this is a game about diving, but also there's a lot of other fun stuff going on that it kind of isn't just about that. In the same way Golf Story wasn't really just about golf, there were lots of other fun things to do in it.
There's a bit where we were pimped out on the boat and a guy rocked up on a speedboat beside us. He was talking to us for a while and we were ripping the piss out because, like, oh my god, he looks like he's dressed like Ash Ketchum. And then a couple of paragraphs into his speaking, he goes, hey, I've got this collectible trading card game, you want to talk about it? I'll install the app on your phone, and it's like, basically it's your kind of to see you collecting all the fish. Something that we didn't dabble in too much because we hadn't collected a lot of ingredients, because underwater there's like various debris, and some of it you can use as ingredients in your stuff in the sushi restaurant, some of it you can use as equipment to upgrade your guns and stuff like that. So one thing you can do is you can balance things out with the fish you caught and do an option called enhance, which is you use some of the recipes you've researched with Banco, and you can decide whether will it be higher value if I enhance this dish and turn it into like a level 2 version of this dish, or a different kind of meal with the same fish, where I'll have less of it, but each individual dish will be of more value. And you've got to do that kind of like, there's the resource management element of like, I've only got so much olive oil, so like which one of the olive oil related dishes will I enhance here, because it's going to burn out my entire supply. Really interesting, really, like, you can engage with it on a very surface level and just kind of go through the motions if you want, but there is like a lot of hidden depth there, ironically, for a diving game.
With the fishing, is there like a risk reward, or like, you know, if you catch a fish alive, do you get like more points for it, or is there anything to that in terms of how you catch the fish?
So you harpoon the cunts. None of them are getting on that boat alive. And you know, harpooning is a small mercy compared to what Jack Lazell is doing to them in the deep blue.
GG, bang, bang.
But there are some types of fish that are aggressive and will go for you and attack you. Some of them are like little kind of like almost piranha style, like red snappers, and they're kind of like just irritants, and you just hit the B button with your basic knife and you get rid of them in a couple of swipes. But then sometimes very early on there's a side quest where a woman who we thought was the food inspector, but it turns out she's a recruitment agent. Her side quest is how you unlock the staffing side of things. She wants a whole shark head for her dinner, and she will stay occupying one of the stools in the sushi restaurant every night until you get it. So you have to go find a shark that will, shocker, attack you.
And then swordfish, I got absolutely wrecked by a sword. I'd got so much fish I could not take any more fish.
Oh yeah, so when you get overburdened, you get slowed down, and then there's a point at which you get overburdened, you literally just can't carry anymore.
Yeah, and I was going for an escape pod, because there are escape pods where when you're in the depths, if you find one, it's like an instant cheat sheet to get back to the top, because you have to get back to the top to resurface when you're on.
If you die or if you drown, you can only take one item back.
Yeah, and just as I was about to get to the escape pod, a swordfish out of nowhere came and just started attacking me, and I got maybe 3/4 of the way through holding down X to get into the escape pod, and then it came back for me and murdered me. So it's the ocean. There are things in the ocean that don't want you alive anymore, Mark.
Funnily enough, don't go down into the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah,
it's very damn nature, you scary.
Exactly.
There was a game I played last year called Dome Keeper, which kind of used a similar setup of that gameplay loop of you go somewhere, you do a bunch of like resources. It's probably procedurally generated to some degree. It's that kind of roguelite-ish feature. And then there's a meta game at the end of it where you use whatever you collect to, you know, upgrade and blah blah blah, which means you can explore further whatever the next time you go. I get really addicted to that, because even a site like Stardew Valley kind of has that setup as well. That kind of like gameplay feedback loop has a very Moorish vibe to it, so the fact that it does that, but has what sounds like a really kind of funny, quirky like narrative to it as well, I think I definitely need to play this game.
I think, Mark, you will really like this game, yeah.
I think this is going to sneak into some Game of the Year lists on this podcast. It's already... I mean, to be fair, there's been a dearth of things I've played this year that weren't Elden Ring, so it's probably already on my top 10 for 2023. But it's excellent, and I'm sure I'll be playing it more. It's in the Steam summer sale at the moment, so I know it only costs like 17 Europeans at the moment. So it's well worth checking out, I think. And that's like good bang for your buck for a brand new game as well. Art style is good, like it's just, you get a pixelated 2D, and there's way more stuff that we haven't even really, in the hour or so we were playing with it yesterday, in the hour or two I've added on top of that, haven't really scratched the surface. So yeah, check it out, Dave the Diver. Hey, I guess for a lack of news, that's kind of it for the Roadcast. Oh, actually, wait, no. Yeah?
Fuck that. I don't really have anything. The only thing I had, which I don't know if you guys would find interesting, is the top 20 list of best rated games on Metacritic this year so far.
Well, you know what? We've got 20 minutes till we get to the car park, so I'm going to give you the microphone here, Jack, and hit us with the top 20 Metacritic games for the year.
Okay, and then we can just maybe any interactions with this game, but number 20 is Doomblade for PC.
I have that downloaded, but I've not actually played it yet.
Yeah. Doomblade?
No. Boy words the game, so I like it.
Age of Wonders 4. Mark shrugs. Dave says nothing.
I'm guessing that's a Civilization style thing.
Potentially. Labyrinth of Galleria, The Moon Society.
I think you're making these up.
That's real. Cassette Beasts, Mark.
Definitely not Pokemon.
Hey, that's on console now. You should play it.
Yeah, it's on Game Pass.
Yeah, more like Jokermon. Anyway, Hogwarts Legacy. We can skip past that one.
Sorry, I should probably speak for Garrett of this. It's just Pokemon.
He's right. He's right. It does need to get in jail. Number 15, The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm going to go to Dave Ryan, our resident Sonic correspondent.
Fucking rocks, man. It's like just a dumb prank that turned into an actual visual novel. I love it.
I do still need to finish that. I got to the point with Knuckles, who's like, he's kind of in on the bit, but he's still Knuckles, so he's like, oh, fuck's sake, have I got to do this? Alright, fine, whatever.
He's in on the bit, but he's not happy about it.
So number 14, Octopath Traveler 2, which is something that I got like a couple of hours into and then stopped playing, and I'm really sorry, Garrett, because I think he said it was pretty good. Number 13, A Space for the Unbound.
Another game I have downloaded but I haven't touched yet.
Not even heard of it.
Alright. Number 12, Humanity on the PS5.
One of my games of the year so far.
There you go.
It's real good.
This does not surprise me, seeing as your bit is to download 2023 games and not play them. You've played Humanity, so it's going to get in.
Hey, you play as a Shiba Inu, alright? Come on.
It's pretty good.
What more do you need to know? Number 11, Paranormacite, The Seven Mysteries of Honjo.
Fake news.
We're genuinely running out of things to call video games.
So many words in there. Yeah, it's a Switch game. I figure it's like one of those wacky fun Switch games that you just see on the store. Number 10, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I absolutely loved that game. It was very, very good. Dave, you've just started it. How are you feeling about it so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's like just a more polished version of Fallen Order, and I was a big fan of Fallen Order. Rancors can eat it, though.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Very difficult early in the game. Number 9 is Diablo 4. I don't think anyone on the podcast has jumped.
This is not a Diablo podcast.
Yeah, no.
The people who are into Diablo are so fucking into Diablo, man. Like, it's their thing. It seems like one of those games where if you're into it, you don't particularly have time to like go outside or play other video games. So yeah, it's never been for me.
Fully intense RPGs, man. Number 8 is one of my games of the year so far, Hi-Fi Rush. Very fun game. Mark, you were enjoying Hi-Fi Rush when you were playing it?
I mean, fucking the final boss fight uses the perfect drug. Like, come on.
absolute banger. Dave Ryan, Hi-Fi Rush?
Still on my list of shame.
It's a good game. Number 7. I didn't play it, but we're heading towards Garrett at the moment. Part of me hopes he's got his Switch so I can at least see what this looks like. But Theatrhythm, Final Fantasy for the Switch, the rhythm motion Final Fantasy music game. Final Fantasy music is always fantastic, so that would be really interesting.
One of the highest rated games of the year, though. Really?
Yeah. Is it 87 on Metacritic?
Is that Garrett skewing the metrics?
I don't know. Maybe this is Garrett's list.
On GarrettKidney.com.
Yeah, speaking of Final Fantasy, number 6, Final Fantasy 16 so far. So 88 on Metacritic, so...
I mean, it looks pretty, you know?
Does bit of a jump. Dead Space to 89.
Oh yeah, that was
Dead Space rocks, but it's only in our Not of 2023 award this year.
Did you play the Dead Space remake?
Yes, I've played the first couple of hours of it, and it fucking rocks. Yeah.
Number 4, and it is for the people who have played this. I have heard nothing but good things about it. Street Fighter 6.
I want to get to Street Fighter 6. I hear really good things about that World Tour single player campaign, and I really want to try it out.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm not really. I'm like usually with fighting games, I'm more of a Mortal Kombat guy. But yeah, I've got the same as you, where like everybody is saying Street Fighter 6 rocks.
Yeah, and like Niner said big things about it, and I know that he mentioned that like the single player campaign, a lot of the traversal, it feels like a Yakuza game dressed up as a Street Fighter game.
Okay, well now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
One of the cool things I've heard about it as well is it's not like overly heavy, and there's a lot of accessibility options. If you don't want to learn insane combos and stuff, you can just have good fights in it. And that is one of the things that's always felt, once you get to a certain level of playing a fighting game, if you try and play it against anyone who is competent, they will dissect you. So I think it sounds pretty fun for the like of it to play. But number 3, another Not of 2023, is Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is on my list.
Rocks.
I am on my list of shame at the moment, and it looks really cool. Mark, have you jumped into any of this?
I mean, you know, I haven't had the time to play half the things I want to play, and that's so I might watch from afar.
Yeah, so that's rated at 93 at the moment. Rated at 94 is the Metroid Prime remaster for the Switch.
It's a good game. I
good.
do feel like, and I mentioned this when we were talking about it, that aspects of the level design haven't held up as well, but if you look at it purely just like what does this play as a kind of remaster of that game, I think it holds up really, really well. I think it looks great, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Does it say a lot that 3 of the top 5 are remakes and remasters?
Yeah, well, welcome to the next 50 odd years of video games.
Where is Dredge on this list?
Dredge is really good.
It's not in the top 20, but number 1, I mean, come on now, it's Tears of the Kingdom, a fantastic video game product. Have either of you two finished the game yet?
Jesus, no.
No, God, what did I do the last thing?
I've only done one temple on mine because, like,
wow.
Again, Elden Ring. Like, I'm only 30 hours in.
Dave's going to be telling us how much Tears of the Kingdom rocks this time next year.
Yeah. Watch this space.
I'm pretty sure I'm in the final stretch. I think I could go and defeat the Demon King now if I wanted to, but obviously I've been playing FF.
Valor.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think we were talking about this in the chat the other day. It's one of the games of the year. I don't think it's quite at that like immediate snapshot. It's definitely number 1. There are things about it where, you know, like, I don't know. We'll probably talk about it when I'm not driving and I can concentrate more. But
yeah. Well, we're not looking for a comprehensive game of the year now. I just thought it's interesting at a midpoint of the year to look at kind of a critical analysis of where the media, the games press are ranking what is the best game of the year, and we do have an awful lot of games still to come.
We got a busy couple of months.
I think where I've sat on it, I was saying this when we had a little version of this chat in our group chat, is not as much like, is it a perfect game? Because I don't think it necessarily is. I don't think any game's perfect, but like, just do I think anything left on the slate of stuff that's definitely coming out this year will catch it in terms of its estimation in my books? Because like, even if, you know, the thing, like I keep hearing people say is like, do you know, like the longer I play, maybe it's like losing a bit of the shine, but like then you're kind of having to cognitively reframe that, like, if a game is losing a shine after 80 hours, as pretty good innings, like, you know what I mean? That you've gotten that far into it before it starts to get a bit tedious. But like, I don't know, like, I don't have any expectation that Starfield is going to be as good as this game, for example, or that it will work for the calendar year 2023 because it's Bethesda. I don't know anything with a great amount of confidence that I can go, right, this is the Zelda beater this year.
What else do we have lined up for this year that's coming out?
Oh, dear.
I mean, a great time to ask it where we're all in the car and we haven't actually prepared that. But yeah, there's quite a few things coming out back end of the year.
I mean, what, Pikmin 4's out at some point? Everybody Switch 1, 2 is out now?
Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Yeah.
Yep.
There is, like, it's not that Exo Primal, of course, we're all looking forward to that. The new Baldur's Gate, Mortal Kombat 1.
Yeah.
Alan Wake 2, Spider-Man. Spider-Man is probably the one. Because Spider-Man has this, like, consensus appeal around a lot of people that I don't think it will be. Like, I could be wrong. But, like, if Miles Morales is an indicator for me, it's like everyone's going to enjoy their time with it, but I don't think it's going to be holy shit, stop the presses, this shit is fucking knocking it out of the park level. Which makes me think that I think it might be the consensus game of the year, if not anyone's passion project. You know what I mean? That kind of a thing.
I think it could end up being like that. It's more of the same, and that more of the same is obviously of an exceptional quality.
Sorry, we are passing Secrets Gentleman's Club.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my word. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. But yeah, I still interesting halfway point to take. See if anything can overthrow Zelda. Like, I've definitely heard people saying things about it where they're maybe not as high on it as I was. I just could not stop playing it relentlessly for an entire month until I'd finished pretty much most of what was in it. So we'll see. I think we'll see how the rest of the year plays out. But yeah, I think we're at the point, Dave, where we've wrapped up the show here on this.
I think so.
Crank this window down.
Thanks for listening to this on the road episode of Link to the Cast. If you want to follow the show, keep up with us, interact with us as the show is posted, at Link to the Cast is where you need to go. Tell us about what you've been playing, what you think about we've been playing. Individually, I'm at the Day to Dave, Mark is at Lithium Project, Jack is at Jack Lazell, Garrett Kidney is at Garrett Kidney. We're going to go see Garrett Kidney now, so until next week, if you're hearing this, we'll see you then. If you aren't hearing this, it came out shit when we listen to it later. Bye.
Bye.